conflicts for adjoining landowners. Is bed and breakfast located on a horse farm for somebody who buys and sells horses so that people who travel a long way can stay there? That might be a good thing. That doesn't necessarily fit traditional zoning, but is that an issue? Versus the allowing of more industrialized uses such as creation of biodiesel or conversion and creation of biodiesel and then generating electricity with it and moving to that quasi-industrial. These are things that are going on in different parts of Virginia, and different localities are trying to figure out how to foster these types of things without creating neighborhood conflicts. So look for more activity and discussion on that topic as we go forward, and I expect we'll see some legislation in the coming session. Mr. Chairman, that's a very high-level view of many different things that are going on. I'd be happy to answer questions or really to take your input of some things that you see as important as we move into the 2011 legislative season.
Certainly, you have hit the highlights of all the main ones that are concerns of us. You know, unfunded mandates have been one of the biggest problems that we've, always follow. So we want to make sure we keep that at the top of the list. We did hear recently there was some proposed legislation about changing some the guidelines on purchasing of school buses. I don't know if you've about some of the guideline purchasing or depletion policy, replacement policies on school buses, which would cost localities more. That was brought to our attention by the school board chairman, Mr. Wright.
There have been the budget that the Assembly approved did change the cycle from the state's perspective on bus replacement from 12 to 15 years. That allowed them to save some money on the state end. I take it you're talking about something different than that?
We were told the other day that they were going the other way.
Well, if they are, they're going to put that on your back because
Right.
the
That's the
state
problem.
budget says they're going to pay for new bus once every 15 years.
That was the issue.
Okay.
Right, yeah, they're going to go the other way. More like every 10 years rather than 12.
Okay. Have I got a deal for you, right? Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other ideas for Eldon to present? Mr. Popovich?
Mr. James, the idea of devolution has been around for a while with concern with VDOT.
Right.
I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I do believe that the state needs to step up if they're going to have a devolution program, that it makes sense. And maybe something in the way for counties, the same way they've done for cities and towns, might be more appropriate than what they currently have. And I'd like to see them explore options that make sense for the counties if they're going to move in that direction anyway. I'm sure we will.
We can expect, as part of the Reform Commission's effort, a whole series of transportation recommendations, although they haven't been at the forefront because of the ABC discussion. I would expect once we move past the ABC discussion, especially if the governor is successful in his one-time infusion of money through the sale of the ABC licenses, to pump modest amount of money into transportation, that you'll see some of those things come forward. And I would expect that the devolution discussion will be on the table. It's too soon to tell you where that may go. I think we all know the general direction of where it seems to be going. But
In that same vein, in my travels and discussions with other folks from within the VDOT family a few years ago, we have found that the process time for projects out there is being hindered by other agencies. In other words, you put a project out there, you send it to an agency, it takes 45 days, they make comments, you go back, and you have to go ahead and fix those comments, you send it back, and they have more comments, which takes another 45 days. And they have 45 days. So you push this project out and out and out and out until it's ridiculous, and to shorten those project times, I think is a must, and having the checks and balances by other agencies when you have personnel that's already available within an agency is kind of ridiculous.
If I may ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
That kind of, there are two ways to look at that. Are we talking about a VDOT project and the external review, or are we talking about VDOT's review of, let's say, a local project that comes through your planning department?
More of their internal
VDOT projects
themselves. Yeah, they're a little more lenient with us, I think, and that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about with devolution.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Eggers?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of things that I would maybe like for us to look at. At the Board of Directors, VACO Board of Directors meeting past Friday, Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolin was there and he spoke to us. And there are several things that the Commission is looking at that I do believe the Governor is going to seriously consider. And one is some type of revision to the income tax program and the way it's now set up. That's probably something that's going to be looked at and discussed in further detail. And I would think that we as a region would want to get in on that discussion and try to put our input into what takes place. The other is the BPOL. There was no question the Lieutenant Governor indicated that that was a tax that they were strongly going to look at. I tried to explain to him that I felt like it was best left up to localities. We as a board understood the BPOL issue with the McKesson group, and we reacted and we acted in a way that was still able to get the McKesson group, but did not throw the BPOL out with the bathwater, so to speak. So, but that is an issue that's going to be out there, and they're going to be looking at very seriously. So I think we need to try to, I don't want to say defend ourselves, but certainly put our positions in a positive way that will cause them to have to look at it much stronger than they would otherwise do. Another issue is the Chesapeake Bay and the environmental issues with the Chesapeake Bay. One of our Board of Directors members from Fairfax sits on a committee for the state, and they have been meeting with the federal people for several months, trying to get them to understand the impact that is going to be on localities if they require the restrictions that they're now wanting to put in place. And she indicated to us at the meeting on Friday that basically the federal guys have said, tough luck. We're going forward full speed with what we had intended, which is going to be quite costly for localities as well as the state, but it's going to impact localities extremely tough. The other issue is the compensation board funding. I think that is something we really need to try to address, because the compensation board, through the General Assembly, through the legislature, is constantly pulling back from what they now do for the constitutional officers in the state. For instance, just recently, the governor announced that he was proposing a 3% bonus for state employees. Well, commissioner revenues are basically state employees. However, it doesn't apply to the commissioner. It doesn't apply to the constitutional officers, the 3% tax. So if they get it, the state has to, the county has to step up to the plate and do that. So again, I just think those are at least 4 areas of concern that we need to try to address as a Region 7, when we get to the annual meeting this year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eggers. Those are all good points.
Mr. Seeley?
Good evening, Mr. James.
Good evening.
I know we talk about unfunded mandates sort of broadly, and we use that, and they mean a lot of things to a lot of folks. And some of the things that I think that are killing us locally around the state are some of the education issues that we don't get to address. We as the taxing authority don't get to be privy to. And I think some of the legislation, and I don't have anything specific tonight, we met with one of the commission members this afternoon who's from Caroline to talk about some of these issues and where we can go and what we can do locally. we're going to have to address, actually look at the state code and make some changes and make some recommendations for some of these things that take place that are hidden to all of us sitting here in terms of school funding. We can't help when they're moving dollars around that we don't know about, and we think we're paying for something and we're not. So one of the things that was recommended to us this evening was to take a look at the state code and look at changes that would facilitate that. And I guess once we have a chance to do that, we could give you a copy of some of the suggestions that we have
Yes, that'd be very, very much be appreciated.
to let you move forward, because we are losing control. You know, half of everybody's budget, state and local, goes to education, and sometimes I just don't understand where the money's gone. And again, the school buses being a case in point. Some of the literary funds for school construction, you know, evaporate. They're not where they're supposed to be. Those kinds of things that sort of hinder everybody. But I think we're going to look at some of the things that were recommended to us this afternoon in that meeting, and hopefully we'll pass that on to you in the very near future to facilitate some help that way, for us and for you.
Yep. That would very much be appreciated, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Mr. James, as always, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Not to belabor all the other points we've had, I think I agree with most of those. The one particular one we didn't mention at all was the Comprehensive Services Act. And just from our experience, you know, specifically, that's an unfunded mandate. You have to do this, and you know, these are the requirements, but there's no money that goes along with it. If there's anything you can do, and I noticed that's part of the you know, agenda we've set up, but if there's anything you can do to help get us some relief or some way to work through that, because I think probably the last 5 years we've added in another $200,000 or $300,000 at the end of the year every year just to match that. So
Yeah, it certainly doesn't make you feel any better to know that you're part of a very large club.
right,
But it is a problem. When we got to the veto session last year, the governor's office had even gone so far as to propose capping the state side of CSA, which, when you're talking about mandated services, that means that shared cost becomes more your share than the state if the state puts a hard cap. Now, that was rejected, fortunately, and that's really from the work of all the local government folks explaining this is going to come right back to the local taxpayer. So we just have to keep explaining that and look for efficiencies where we can in the program administration.
yeah, and I mean, not to beat the horses that's dead, but we basically have to send people, you know, Mr. Parton gives us a report, we have to send people to Fredericksburg because we don't have a service for them here, paying that transportation cost, whatever the service requirement cost is, and we never budget enough money. And that's not our fault. It's just, it always costs more than anybody expects, so.
As I said, that all of your neighbors have exactly the same problem, and the Commonwealth does. As we get to each General Assembly session, they're appropriating more money for their share of CSA to finish out the year they're in, just
Exactly.
like you have to.
Exactly.
We are all doing that because of the needs of the people that are served and because of the way the program works.
Yeah, and maybe it's time to look at a different way to serve those folks.
Well, it was a major overhaul in the 90s to create the program that we had. I think most people will tell you that are involved in the service delivery, yeah, it has its problems, but it's better than what we had before. But you know, we've been doing it, we're working our way up to 15, 20 years.
Right.
And you may be right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and just one last thought. You think there's any chance that we could get Region 7 to support the idea for the change in the funding of the fuel tax for the state, that counties like Caroline to collect the about $55 million annually?
You mean for the off the rack? You mean
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
get
rack
a
rather than?
greater return to the locality who collects it. In spirit, in that.
It certainly is worth putting on the table.
let's
As
put it
you
on
know,
hold.
you say anything that deals with fuel tax and the 140 legislators to the south of here tend to pull at their collars quite a bit.
Well, I don't want a new one, I just want a percentage of it to come back to Caroline.
So maybe what we need to do is like EPA has done with all the flack that they've gotten over saying that if we didn't do what we're supposed to do in Chesapeake Bay, there are going to be consequences.
Yeah.
Have you heard their new term? They no longer call them consequences, they call them backstops. Because that sounds so much better, especially in baseball season. Well, we got to find another way to say it, fuel something but not tax.
Okay.
Maybe we can get somewhere with it.
But if it could change that formula, it would help counties like Caroline,
You're right.
and maybe, Stafford and all of
Hey, Elder?
Yes, sir.
When I pull up at the pump and it costs more, it's a tax. I don't care what you call it.
Well,
Yes, sir.
we're not asking for anything to cost anymore. We're asking just get a
Increase the price
change in the formula,
Yeah.
so counties like Caroline that collect much more than any other county, a piece comes back up. Mr. Popovich?
Yes. And Mr. James, we've had discussions with our congressmen and senators on the same issue, because Virginia is a donor state, on the excise tax. If we could encourage our state legislatures to kind of band together and say, look, we need more of those funds coming back to the state, we could probably work something out where folks like us in Caroline could take a percentage of that money that's come back. If it's more like 98% rather than 96 is currently coming back to us, we get 1% back. That I floated that idea out there before, but it didn't seem to get any legs. If we could get something like that going and kind of appeal to the feds on that level, maybe we could do something that wouldn't be so ouchy to the Northern Virginia folks.
Okay.
And we know what that does to us when we're down here and they're up there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Their hair bristles on their neck when they hear that.
Okay, and we understand you did visit DEQ today. Was it today?
Yes, sir.
And you were successful for Caroline County, and we appreciate your efforts. And
Mr. Gills
yes,
said,
Mr. Walter Gill.
I give up. I finally accept that what you've been telling us for over a year is correct, and you have adequately documented all the expenditures. And he says that he will have the request to VRA by the end of the week, which means that the money should be transferred before the end of the month.
Okay. And that's a refund from the Don project for 380.
Approximately
1,000.
380,000, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, and it's good to be with you all, and
All right.
keep those suggestions coming.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next we'll take a break. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Sounds good.
The Board of Supervisors meeting, and we have the update status on the cannery building. Mr. Ashcraft, who's going to present that to us?
Mr. Borshuk, sir.
Does he know that?
He just found out.
Good evening, sir.
We're discussing how much we have to bond in order to, no. Good evening, gentlemen. We've, in the past, done some discussions about the cannery, and we've had some evaluations looking into its state and what it needs to really be brought up to snuff.
Let it go.
Some repairs that are needed. And what we want to do this evening is kind of rehearse some of those that we've talked about, combine everything together, and try and get some direction as to, what are we really going to be doing with that. The cannery is not open right now, as you're aware. There's no money in the budget really to staff it. And in the past, we've had some studies done, and also our building official has been through and looking at some of the issues that are there. And we, about this time last year, came up with an estimate of $37,500 for kind of a minimal amount of work to really bring it up to standards, plus We also had an evaluation done on the foundation, and while we know there's work to be done there, at the time we never really got into a full estimate of what that work would be. There are two options we could take if we decide to really move ahead and use the cannery. But since we weren't in a position of moving ahead, we decided that we would wait until we knew what we were going to do before we spent some more money to find out how much more money we'd have to spend. So we know we're at least looking at $37,500 plus foundation work to bring the building into code status. And again, what we're looking for is some guidance as to, you know, what we might think the ultimate status of that building might be. Will it be used as a cannery again? Are there some other uses we could put it to, which would maybe not require as much in the way of repairs? So, and with that, if you have questions, comments that we might want to consider.
I'm going to ask a question since the chairman is. Mr. Popowitz, weren't you and Radco working on? Was it you with Radco that was discussed using the cannery as a regional?
It was George Washington Regional Commission.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah. The guys seemed to be wanting to do it at the time. I think that because of, just like us, because of budget constraints, that kind of thing, they were also looking at some options for grants that never panned out. I don't think that the rest of the counties have the stomach right now to even put anything towards it. I just get that feeling they're not willing to do that.
Actually, I don't think the commission had it high on their priority list, to be quite frankly.
No, it's not high on their priority list.
Yeah.
Okay. I just thought that was, you know, possible use. The only other thing is we could give it back to the school, and they actually gave it to us because they're not doing anything like that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a historic structure. I know once you lose a historic structure, it's gone forever. I'd hate to lose it, but I guess we got to figure out what to do with it first. So.
The Quinn River folks were once talking about, you know how we go to the food shelter in Fredericksburg for all the churches and all that, they go up there and get that stuff. You know, and they were looking for maybe a site just in Caroline, so maybe all churches could just come to Caroline and get it rather than, you know, go to the food pantry in Fredericksburg. So there was some talk with Quinn Rivers. I think maybe we need to follow up with them and see if they still have a possible funding mechanism, you know, to look at that as another option as well. 'Cause that was still out there, but, you know, we looked at different things over the last few months, and that was one other option. Because you still have the freezer and the refrigerator units out there that are very usable. Would you say that'd be an accurate statement?
Quite a bit of the equipment there is usable, and in fact, we've actually had one or two folks come in and say, "Gee, I see the cannery's not open. Do you think I could buy this, that, or the other?" But of course, we haven't declared any of it.
Right.
But there, a lot of the equipment is still quite usable, yes.
And we have a Caroline representative that's on the food, as part of the food bank, you know, to see if there's still interest from the Fredericksburg food bank in that process. Trying to think of the lady's name who's on that committee. It's still a possibility because in the future, I think they would like to have the distribution center, you know, maybe in each county, and that's another possible use. But still, we have on the cannery side of the building, have all these issues.
Yes.
You wanna try to find if they wanna use it first? Because, I mean, if we can find a use that justifies repairs, if we don't have a use, we can't really justify repair.
I think it's pretty much consensus of the group. You can have another use and some other funding mechanisms as well.
I think that's the issue, is the fact that, we talked about the McShin Foundation being a use for it. They were going to pay for the repairs that to be done to the building. I have no problem with that. And if the food bank wants to pay for the repairs, I have no problem with doing that. I just think that the cannery, I think we had a survey done of people that came to the cannery, and most of the people that were using the cannery the last time it was open last year, when we opened it for a period of time, were from outside of Caroline County.
Yes.
And so there were no people in the county, or very few people in the county that was using the cannery.
We
So-
did have a few, but
Yeah, absolutely,
Yes.
yeah, but the majority were from outside of the county. So it's not that the county people has benefited from it. And so,
Hey, Mr. Borshak, could you give me or give us a little perspective? How much would it cost if we decide to totally demolish the cannery, cart off everything, and pour salt in the ground? How much would that cost?
we can look into what demolition would be, yes. It may not be as cheap as what you think, but yes, we can.
Oh, no, I would expect it's probably going to cost us more to demolish the cannery than to fix it right now. But how many times do we fix it with no use?
when it's
Well,
down, it's
another
down.
thing,
I don't have to worry about doing any more repairs to it once it's torn down,
Oh,
if that's what we do.
Right.
And I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating it, tearing it down. I think that if some other organization wants to take it over and do something with it, that's what I'd like to see happen.
Long-term lease or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Borchert,
or
is
you sell it.
is there some way to find
Right
out what the
organization.
equipment value is as well? If we were to change usage to, say, a pantry rather than a cannery?
We could, I guess, come up with some sort of an estimate, because there are some other, like facilities around.
Okay.
And like I say, we've had some inquiries. So we may come up with some sort of an estimate, but as you know, when you try and ask around and come up, it's like putting these things on eBay, and you kind of get what people actually, but, yeah, we can look into what we think we could, get from some of the usable equipment. We could also, we mentioned a few agencies that may have an interest in some sort of a use for the building, and it may be that we could, if we sat down and looked, that there may even be some use for the county for it in another way. But I think if we can bring all of this together and present it in a package and let you make a decision on that, what we can get for the equipment, what any practical, feasible uses might be, and go from there.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Ashcraft, you have a county administrator's report?
Mr. Chairman, it was delivered to the members yesterday. Mr. Thomas has it online, I believe.
Okay.
You get a hard copy. County Administrator's report. The only thing I'd like to pull out of that, and certainly I can answer any questions, is, as you know and would expect, there's a lot of interest in the reassessment process. Blue Ridge Appraisal is holding a public meeting at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, September the 8th, here in the auditorium, to answer general questions about the process and what they are finding as they go about assessing the property. There's been kind of a misnomer that, first of all, that they have already published general assessments on their website, and I've learned from the Commissioner of Revenue this evening that that is not true. And also, the night of September 8th, they will not be discussing individual properties or individual assessments with anybody who attends the meeting. But they do want to let people know what they're finding, and also, maybe more importantly, to let people know how the appeal process works if they don't agree with their assessment when they do receive it. So that's an important meeting. Certainly supervisors are invited to attend, and it's also my understanding is that they will attend the September 14th board meeting. Mr. Chairman, if that is something you want to approve on the agenda, they are willing to do that as a follow-up to the public meeting on the 8th.
Does it look like we have room on that agenda?
I think so.
I think it's good to have an update of where we are, so we can articulate that to the rest of the citizens. Okay?
Other than that, if there's any questions about the content of my report, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Ashcraft on his report? Monday is for the school. What time was that meeting?
12 o'clock?
On noon, the 16th.
That's right.
Okay.
That's a
All
new
right.
teacher luncheon, not a all-teacher luncheon.
All right,
It's
so
just
new teacher, okay. I think I'll be back in county by that time. All right,
You will reside.
closed meeting is the next item. We still have a closed meeting?
Yes, we do. One item.
Okay.
One
Mr.
item.
Vice Chairman, would you
Sure.
have the pleasures?
I move that this board convene in closed session pursuant to the public contract exemption of section 2.2-3711A29, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county regarding competing PPEA proposals for potential expansion of the county's wastewater treatment plant. Is there a second?
Is there a second? Okay, motion made and properly second.
Thank you, sir.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. All right, and before we go into closed session, do we have closing board comments?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Chairman,
Akers?
the only closing board comments I would have would be, would the board members be agreeable to, for September, instead of the September the 28th, have the meeting on the September the 21st? Moving it up, huh?
I have to look.
I have a problem with that.
Right now, I don't have anything on September
I'm probably
21st.
okay.
Mike, you okay with that?
What's that?
September the 21st rather than September the
All
28th?
right, Mr. Seeley, what did you say?
I just, without a calendar in front of me, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
You okay?
Mr. Popowitz, you good?
I think I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman?
Right now, that's an open date. If we want to lock it in, I'll keep it.
All right, let's you lock it in.
Yeah.
You work with that, Ms. Seeley?
I'll move. If there's something, I'll move it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ashcraft, it work for you and staff? Okay, we do have to have a motion to have that.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we move our September 28th meeting to September the 21st.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. All right, motion carries. And we'll now go into closed meeting. Meeting.
You made the motion. Second.
All right, motion made, proper second. Do we come out of closed meeting? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. All right, board members were certified. We only talked about areas that we went into closed meeting for. Mr. Popowitz,
I so certify.
Mr. Akers,
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley,
I so certify.
Mr. Thomas,
I so certify.
and I so certify as well. Do we need to take any actions on any of these things?
Set a work session for 6 p.m. Monday, August 16th.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion made and properly second that we'll have a work session for August 16th at 6 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same.
Motion to adjourn in order, Mr. Chairman?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and properly second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same. Will now be adjourned.